It is once again time for Husker Chat. I am Jayson Jorgensen. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment. As always, we're joined by Sean Callahan, publisher of Husker Online. Nebraska coming off certainly a disappointing performance last week at home against second-ranked Michigan. Sean, what was your kind of read on the game? My read was that folks maybe understood that Nebraska wasn't going to win this game, but it was tough to sit there and take to see Nebraska really struggle and not be all that competitive.
Yeah, I think if you're an educated football fan, you know the team that Michigan has, the talent they have. I think the disappointing thing still was just 2 years ago, Nebraska almost beat this same Michigan team inside Memorial Stadium, and they put up a hell of a fight. And, you know, that team had a lot of first rounders on it too. And so the fact that the team almost backed down from the fight, that's been the message. And Matt Rule, they came back, Jason, on Sunday with a full padded practice. I mean, it was not a walkthrough. It was a real practice the day after the game. I think it was Rule's message like, hey, you know, like we have to show up. And that was not acceptable the way we came out against Michigan.
When you look at where they're at, kind of a snapshot, 5 games in, is this about where you thought the Huskers would be? I'm sure some of these struggles, especially on offense, this isn't a surprise. We knew this team was going to struggle to score points on people. But where do you think they're realistically at after 5 games?
Well, yeah, I mean, they've been underdogged in 3 games, and they've lost all 3 of them. So, I mean, if you're going off that, I mean, the record is kind of what people thought it would be. I still believe, though, a lot of us thought that 3-2 was very possible through these first 5. And you go back to that Minnesota game, that probably should have been a win. And the Colorado game, they played them really tough. It was a 13-7 game late in the third quarter, and then it fell apart. So I think, you know, if you were able to still have gotten that Minnesota win to start the year, everything feels a lot different. But now there's just a mounting pressure the rest of the way, just to kind of have a, you know, strong finish and maybe get to a bowl game. You have 7 games remaining against teams not ranked. That's never happened since Nebraska's joined the Big Ten Conference.
They have a stretch coming up where, yes, these games are winnable, but also you can make the case they could lose these games too. I mean, they have a number of 50-50 games on the docket.
They really all are. I mean, I think the Wisconsin game and the Maryland game were the 2 toughest ones on there today. And Maryland's coming into Lincoln the week after they play Penn State, so the timing is favorable. But Maryland might be the 4th best team in the league, and Wisconsin might be the 5th best team. And Michigan could be 1 or 2 or 3. So they will have seen 3 of the top 5 teams. Now, with that said, I think they'll see pretty much all the bottom teams in this conference other than Indiana. So they have a really good draw. They've got to execute. And all of these games every week are going to be down to the wire. I mean, Nebraska's not really good enough to blow out anybody. They're not going to see, though, a lot of big-time offenses, maybe other than Maryland, that are going to really stress them and test them. So they've got an opportunity, but they've got to show up and play a lot better than they did last week.
Today on Husker Chat, we're joined by Sean Callahan. We're talking Husker football. Sean, I've not asked you about this so far this fall, but I'll do it now. How is recruiting going? I've seen maybe a little smoke, some whispers, some of the guys that they did have verbal commitments from kind of kicking the tires at other places. How do you feel this class is holding together despite the fact the Huskers have not had a great start to the year?
Well, they're at 26 commits right now, and the class is ranked 23rd. So they've got a solid class right now from all accounts. But, yeah, you've got Notre Dame kind of trying to work on Carter Nelson. I mean, that's a big one to watch. But Kewan Lacey's having an outstanding year as a running back. You know, they've got some really, really good players. Daniel Kalen, his team around him has been hurt, but I still think he's a fine quarterback. Carlin Jones, the D lineman out of Houston, is, you know, one of the more under the radar guys. We have him as a 4-star add-on 3 right now. They're very high on Carlin Jones. But yeah, Willis McGahee's probably one of the names you worry about in this class. But I think in general, it's a top to bottom solid group. And, you know, they might have 1 or 2 more spots left here to fill before it's all said and done.
How about this week? A Friday game. I made it known. I don't like Friday games, and nobody asked me, but that's what Nebraska's doing. It works for Illinois to have this thing on a Friday night. Seems like the Huskers maybe get them at a good time. The Illini did not look good last week at all, being blown out by Purdue, who themselves had struggled this year.
Yeah, in year 3 of Brett Bielema, it feels like this is his worst team. I mean, in year 1, they were respectable. They had some nice wins. Year 2, they almost won the West. Here they are, year 3. They're really struggling as an offense. They didn't convert a lot of third downs. Purdue blowing them out was a huge surprise. But you just didn't see that coming. I think Nebraska, the atmosphere for a road team is favorable this week. I can't imagine there's a lot of people fired up to drive into Champaign on a Friday night. You know, they put these games on Friday night for television reasons. They generally try to get a school that's willing to give up a home game. So it's always a Illinois, a Maryland, maybe a Rutgers, maybe a Purdue, Indiana, those type of teams. And then they try to pair a team like Nebraska or Iowa, somebody that will draw a rating. And they put these games on Friday knowing that it's going to get a much better rating than if they had it in the Saturday lineup. And Nebraska has played a lot of these. I mean, they've played about as many of these Friday night road games since Sean Eichhorst signed him up for it a few years back.
Okay, when you start to boil this matchup down, what's the biggest key for the Huskers against an Illinois team that one of the most penalized teams in the nation?
I just think establishing a rhythm on offense and running the ball. I mean, they had no rhythm, and it started right off the bat with the interception. They had some penalties too, and they were just 5-yard penalties, but Nebraska's not good enough to overcome a lot of those 5-yard penalties right now. So they've got to be buttoned up on their formations and their procedural penalties. And you know, get Anthony Grant going. He only had 6 carries last week, but Jayson, that game was like 46 snaps or something of that number. They did not play a lot of offensive snaps in that Michigan game. So they've got to, you know, maybe get that number closer to the mid 60, high 60 range, as they were probably 20 snaps under what they normally would be in that game last week against Michigan.
All right. Hopefully they can put it behind them and play much better on the road and square up the record at 3-3. Sean, as always, we appreciate the time. Have a great trip out east.
Thank you.
And that was Sean Callahan, the publisher of HuskerOnline, joining us for Husker Chat. We're here every week, and it's brought to you by Acres Equipment. I'm Jayson Jorgensen.